another big thing that our defense don't get credit for in that 2014 run, and that's why I stand on this team. I would put this team versus any Ohio State team versus any college football team ever, because 3 games back to back to back we played against the 3 Heisman Trophy finalists and held them to their career, not season, career worst game.
Welcome to episode 3 of The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. His real name is Cardale Jones. His nickname is Beanie Wells. I'm Dave Holmes. Make sure you like us, follow us on social media at The Script OSU, but we really want you to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. I'm talking YouTube and Apple, or follow us on Spotify. All right, guys, a lot to talk about today. House NCAA settlement. We're going to deep dive 2014, Mr. Cardale Jones, little glory days. We're also going to talk water fasts. Apparently, that's a thing. We'll get to that. Let's start, though, with this new concept of a 16-team playoff. We saw Ryan Day do an interview with ESPN. They talked about the possible expansion again, maybe as early as next year. All right. The model would most likely be 5 plus 11, meaning 5 automatic bids for your conference champs, 11 at large. So, Beanie, your initial reaction to us going from 4 to 12 to potentially 16.
You know what? My initial reaction was, didn't this house settlement just come into play?
Yeah.
Now we're talking about, these guys no longer being amateurs whatsoever. That's out of the realm of possibility now. Now we're talking about these business decisions being made and how they're going to continue to be made, not just for the best interest of the athlete, but for the best interest of the universities, because now it's about dollars and cents. We got to give these guys $20 million. Okay, now let's treat this like a real professional business. Extend the schedule. Let's extend the playoffs. Let's make more money off more games, and now we'll be okay with, spreading the wealth around and sharing a little bit.
Woo.
So do I mind it? No, not whatsoever.
Spoken like
now, guys they're pros.
That's spoken like a true player. I always laugh when I hear Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, talk about player safety. But how about a 17-game regular season? How about an 18-game regular? So, all right, Cardinal, he's taking the player side as far as, more revenue potentially here. What's your take on 5 plus 11 equals 16?
You know what? I'm not completely opposed to it as long as they get the structure right. I mean, add as many teams as you want, but make sure you make it as fair as possible and you make it beneficial for those at-large teams to fight for that final 2 spots. But then we talk about that 5 plus 11 scenario where the 5 conference champs get the automatic bid. Really automatic bye. Because if you're going to your conference championship game in a Power 4 plus the 5 conference, you are going to go to the college football playoffs. There's no way you're going to compete in the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and say, hey, I made it to my conference championship game. I lost. Now I'm not a top 16 team in the freaking country to make the college football playoffs. At this point, I still want them to incentivize. If they go this route here in the near future, I still want them to incentivize those top spots where you're giving these guys more. And back to what Beanie said, the house settlement just settled. They're trying to find a way to continue to recuperate some of that money that this $2.8 billion is about to go away from the NCAA and make up with some of this back pay. And then the future of these 20s and 20, I think that revenue share number goes up 2% every year. So the university got to divvy out more every year. So they got to find a way to keep in more each and every year as well.
Yeah, in our next segment, we're going to break down the house settlement and talk about some of the ways these dollars and cents are going to work out. But Ryan Day, in this interview, he mentioned something that caused a little bit of a wave. He said that if they go to 16 teams, he thinks that the Big Ten should get 4 automatic bids. Now, I've said it our first 2 episodes. I'm going to say it on episode 3. There are dozens of Ohio State podcasts out there that will tell you everything is scarlet. Ohio State's always right. They're going to win every game. Guys, I'm going to go ahead and say, hand up, I don't agree with Ryan Day on this one. I don't think the Big Ten should get 4 automatic bids. I think they will, because they're the best conference in college football, or 1A, 1B with the SEC on any given year. I think they will get 4 in, but I don't think we should reserve 4 because sometimes the league is up, sometimes the league is down. Get ready. Okay, another thing you'll never hear on any other Ohio State podcast. For the better part of the 21st century, the SEC was the premier conference in college football. I think that's a fact. Now, I think in the last 3 to 4 years, we've seen a major pendulum switch, and now it's back to the Big Ten. But in those years, I don't know if the Big Ten really deserved more teams. And last year, guess what? The SEC was bad. It was just bad. And I know fans down south don't like to hear it. It was bad. So last year, the SEC didn't deserve 4 teams. So rant over on my end. What do you guys think about Ryan Day's idea that the Big Ten should always get 4 no matter what?
I actually don't mind it. I mean, when you look at the landscape of things and how it's been the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years,
Mhm.
when you really break it all the way down, you look at the top tier teams in the country, the Big Ten is going to be there. The SEC is going to be there.
So if they're going to be there, why do you reserve it if they're going to be there?
Because it's
they'll
one of
get
the most powerful conferences. I mean, that's
Okay.
what it's all about.
We're
And then
flexing.
when we're talking about, the business side of things, the Big Ten is going to bring dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And, if I'm a coach and I know and understand that, why not say, you know what? Forget the dollars and cents standpoint. I know we're going to do that, but I automatically want to be there in that spot because let's just say we do have a down year for whatever reason, but we
Mhm.
happen to be one of the better teams in our conference. We'll still be getting an opportunity to fight for what we all want at the end of the day, and that's to hoist the championship trophy. So I understand where he's coming from, and I understand his reasoning. When you got the power and the leverage, you got to use it when you can.
Here's my take, though. What I just heard, Cardale, is if the Big Ten is down, we still want them to get 4 teams. And here's the way I look at it. I always say, what if the roles reversed? If I heard this come out of the SEC's mouth, and I heard Lane Kiffin, or if I heard Bama, they thought they should have gotten in last year, even though they got smoked by Oklahoma, I would say you didn't deserve it. All
Yeah,
right, so what's your take?
And that's the point I stand with as well. No, you got to deserve it. You got to get in. And I get it for brand recognition. You look at the top brands around the country. You look at the top 10. I guarantee you at least 4 or 5 is going to be at the Big Ten.
They
With
will
Ohio
be.
State, Michigan. Oregon is starting to make its name in there. Historically, no, but I think in this last decade, they're starting to make a push for some top brand. And then clearly Penn State. And then USC is kind of trying to turn back into this prominent days. They have the number 1 recruiting class right now going into 2026. So brand recognition that's going to bring dollars to the media, that's going to bring dollars to these universities. Yes. But no, I'm completely against far as saying just because I play here or I play a tough schedule, we should automatically have 4 spots reserved for us. The name of the game, it will always be the best teams are going to deserve those top spots. And if you don't come from a conference where you're playing tough schedules and tough opponents each and every week, or at least for the better half of your schedule, then it's hard to say, are you deserving of a top 16 potentially seeding at the end of the year, but saying, hey, no matter what, 4 from this conference is going to get in. No, I look back at the Big Ten a few years ago, especially when it was Leaders and Legends or the East and the West. When
It's terrible.
Oh, don't bring that up. Don't bring that up.
When the West side of the conference, wasn't the greatest and usually had one team every other year just dominate the other side. I mean, no knock on Northwestern. Great, go there, get a great education, getting a great facility, getting a great a stadium here built now in Chicago, but they represented that side in the Big Ten championship game one year.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't want to see something like that where you say, no matter what, we're going to put 4 teams in there, put the best 4, put the best 12, put the best 16 teams in the country. Find a way to put those guys in the playoffs and let them fight for the national title.
Okay, so let me now, I ripped down Ryan Day's logic. Let me build it back up, and I'll give him 2 points on this. One of his points is they essentially absorb the best of the Pac-12. So his case is if we're going to bring in Washington, USC, UCLA, and Oregon, we almost need to reserve an extra spot because we absorb the Pac-12. That's part of the case. The other case here, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Beanie, since you seem to be more pro Ryan Day on this than we are in this argument. I think this is a more legitimate case, is that it incentivizes hard schedule in your non-conference because you have reserved spots. Whereas if it's all about, like Cardale and I say, just try to go 10-2 or 11-1 every year, you might schedule more cupcakes. All right, so I get on that side of it. If you know your conference is going to hold 4 spots no matter what, well, then you're not afraid to play home and homes with Alabama, Georgia, and Texas. So your thoughts on that side of reserving 4 spots?
Man, I love it. I mean, when we talk about college football, we all want to see the top programs play the top programs on a week-to-week basis, and we don't get a lot of that.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the SEC, late in the season, they were playing a cupcake team in the middle of the year. I hate it. And a lot of the times that, we did see the Alabamas, the Georgias win, they did have an easier road non-conference-wise to get into a championship. Now, obviously, they beat each other up in the SEC, so you respect it a little bit differently. But when we talk about, teams in the Big Ten, I do want to see top-tier games on a week-to-week basis. And I think this will obviously incentivize that, like you just mentioned, because you got a spot. You're not scared just to say, we can have a blemish here, we can lose here, and now we're out of it completely. No, that won't be the case.
But
so
the
it saves
thing
them,
is,
so to speak.
But the thing is this. The non-conference scheduled games does not matter. And I don't think people really understand this because the Big Ten the best two teams in the Big Ten is going to play, as far as the best two records against the rest of the conference. So I can play Alabama, and I can play Texas, I can play Florida State, my first 3 non-conference games, go 0-3 and win the rest of the Big Ten and represent my side in the Big Ten as a top 2 opponent in the Big Ten because of my record I did in conference. And then we go deeper into that. Well, the number 1 team out the Big Ten is going to get the automatic bid. So the team who's going to win their conference championship most likely is going to get those bids. And then to go back to my point earlier, if you're playing in the Big Ten championship game, in the SEC championship game, and the ACC championship game, most likely you're going to go to the college football playoffs. At that point, you're fighting for a potential number 1 seed and a potential bye. So the non-conference game scheduling doesn't hold as much weight. I think we emphasized it a little bit too much back in the BCS era when one loss would destroy your record, where it's just do well in your conference and you're going to have an opportunity to compete for your conference championship game.
What happened a couple of years ago with Florida State? They were one of those undefeated teams.
They went undefeated, lost their quarterback, and they got left on the outside looking in.
Yeah, but they were undefeated and they won their conference, correct?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could be, charting tough territory towards that situation, because now if we're talking about automatic bids, that Florida State team would automatically been in, and they weren't one of the best.
Now the new structure, because they would want a conference, they're in.
Change it,
And I think that was a huge deciding factor of this new 12-team system, saying you win your conference, you're in, right? But they looked at what Florida State had to offer versus the other 3 teams that was in the playoffs at that time, and the 4th team that was on a bubble, and they say, well, it really doesn't match up for us. They don't pass the eye test on how they got that win, and it was such a bad win in their conference championship game, I think, versus Louisville. But then on the flip side, I guarantee the College Football Playoff Committee said they don't want another shellacking what Georgia did to TCU, right? And that was going to potentially happen to Florida State if they was going to be in the College Football Playoffs with that 4-team system going in, with no pun intended, going in with a 3rd-team quarterback after we saw the performance that the team had overall in their ACC championship game.
Yeah, well, not all 3rd-string quarterbacks are created equally. Right. we learned that. All right, so let's time for our weekly segment here. What's your beef? Okay, so what is your biggest beef with the college football playoff? Beanie, I'll start with you.
I love it right now. So I don't necessarily have a beef with the college football playoff.
Are you vegan right now?
Right. But if there's
can't go vegan on what's your beef.
If there's one issue that I do not like, is I hated last year how it worked out where, the automatic conference winners got the bye weeks, because I obviously didn't think Boise State deserved a bye week in that conference or that college football playoff. That was my only issue whatsoever.
So they fixed your beef.
They did.
Okay, so his beef is fixed. Cardale, what do you got?
My beef is still always not incentivizing enough that number 1 through 4 spots and giving those guys more of an edge to play harder all year round, knowing that, hey, I'm not only just potentially getting a bye, but I'm also getting a home game because I deserve it. This is now, especially with the house settlement, this is now, I wouldn't even say minor league because there's so much money in these top players. This is now in a professional football. I'm not going to call it the NFL, but it's professional football. Let's stop calling it a transfer portal. Let's call it what it is. It's free agency. The salary cap is now put in place with $20 million, and now we have a real true playoff system that can be more legitimized if we incentivize those top 4 spots.
Yeah, my biggest beef is just the complaining. Just enough. If we go to 16, I don't want to hear 17 whine. If they go to 32, then 33 is going to whine. And we saw it with the college basketball world. They went from 64 to 68. They're still whining. And my point is this: you have 3 to 4 months to build a resume. And if you leave doubt, it's just like the officials. All right, don't complain about the refs if you lose by 2 scores or if you lose by even a field goal. If you leave doubt, you put it in someone else's hands. So my biggest beef is no matter how much they expand this, someone's going to whine about it. Enough with the whining. All right, so let's segue here briefly. We talked about tough non-conference games. Well, the Buckeyes just lined up Navy and Youngstown State later this decade. Now, to be fair, you're going home and home with Texas. They have home and homes on the book with Georgia and Alabama here in the next decade. But Navy and Youngstown State, guys. All right, I mean, look, when Tressel was here and Youngstown State had a little more cachet, Beanie, I mean, so what do you think about Navy and Youngstown State on the non-conference?
Look, I mean, I understand for the in-state people that love, the smaller school in Ohio, getting an opportunity to knock off the big dog and just even play in that stadium. I love it from that perspective, but come on, it doesn't do anything. It doesn't get my juices flowing whatsoever. When I see Navy and Youngstown State on the schedule.
Well, we like the troops. We support the troops here on the script. So there you go, Cardale. What do you think about Navy coming to town?
Good luck. I mean, they always. I mean, I'm being serious. Speaking of good luck, because I played against Navy, and I think we only won by a score and a half.
That's true. That was
Navy,
a close game.
Traditionally, historically, they always been a tough opponent for anyone getting ready for. Especially look at this year they did with Blake Horvat and some unbelievable things they did in the bowl game and leading up to their rivalry game. But I like it actually. I like it actually because they get an opportunity to play in a shoe in front of a crowd that they usually don't get to play in front of, and really play us really hard. I mean, it's never been too much of a blowout in that Navy game. Now, Youngstown State, I can't speak too much about the history of Ohio State and playing them and how tough they play them, but it goes back to my point. It doesn't really matter about the non-conference games, as long as you do well in the Big Ten or the SEC and you're in conference play. You're going to have an argument for a top spot in the playoffs.
Were you on a team with Brian Rowe?
No.
Okay, so I remember B-Roll had a pick 6, but it was like a 2-point conversion versus Navy.
A pick 2?
Yeah, a pick 2.
Pick
that,
two.
Made the game kind of start getting out of reach, and it wasn't even out of reach. I think they only won like 20 to, 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
I thought you was on that team. No.
Yeah.
No, we played them in Baltimore at the Ravens Stadium.
Yeah, we're going to deep dive that Navy game, some of the season here coming up later in the show. But if you're a fan of the script here, we have a special offer that we want to tell you about that's just for you.
You know what? And you like football, you want to get a little bit closer to the game. Prime Sportsbook is where you want to be. Right now, they are matching every deposit up to $500, and that's easy math for me. I put in $250, boom, I got $500 to play with.
And the juice, man. This is where Prime really stands out. Most places are taking 8, 12, sometimes 15%. Prime is only taking 8. That means you keep more money in play, and hopefully you're winning and more money in your pocket. That adds up over a long season.
8%, that's a small number. That's like Beanie's body fat. 8%. Now, Beanie, last week you told us a story. Remember, it was your mom, right, who told you not to go to USC?
Yeah, she sure did. She got me thinking. And sometimes all you need is another voice in your ear to get the wheels churning, get you thinking a little bit. And that's one thing I love about Prime Sports. They got live callers at the call center, so real people to support you with questions that you may have, not those flimsy AI robots that we've been dealing with.
That's a good point. But one thing I love the most is the fast payouts and the reduced juice. We're talking to real people, like you said, Beanie, when it comes to issues and concerns. Just go to primesports.com and use promo code SCRIPT and cash in on that 100% deposit match up to $500 and start betting now.
Yeah, Prime Sportsbook, that's where our audience is going to be all season long. If you're a fan of the show, support us, support them, get on there, but you have to use that promo code SCRIPT to get that 100% bonus match. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk more dollars. All right, if you're going to make a lot of money this year on Prime Sportsbook, you know who else is going to make a lot of money? Some of these athletes now. We're going to talk NCAA house settlement. Coming up next on The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Welcome back to The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Make sure you follow us on all social handles at The Script OSU. But more importantly, subscribe on Apple and YouTube or follow us on Spotify. New episodes every Wednesday, The Script. Okay, so this week, finally, the House settlement has been approved. There's going to be this $20.5 million cap, essentially a salary cap, roster limits instead of scholarships. New world of college football. So I go to my dollars and cents guy, Cardale Jones. I know you're in the world of NIL. So what's going to happen now? How does this change things now that it's finally set in stone?
Well, I mean, it changed. It's a historical moment for college athletics. I know when we talk about the House settlement, clearly the big thing we were kind of having our eye on is what it means for the revenue generating sports around college football in these campuses. But now having an ability for the schools to pay the student athletes directly. Now, what we don't know is all the different rules and regulations that's going to come with in-house now. Now you see some of that power kind of shift back into the university hands, because now, for example, if a guy, now is it going to be performance-based? Now now can I find you? Now can I dock you for certain things if you're not doing what you have to do, off the field as well? So those are things you couldn't do before in NIL because it was controlled by so much of outside entities where, if the kid played good or bad, it doesn't matter, because if they sign a $100,000 deal with, a outside source, they was going to get that money because NIL cannot be pay for play. Now, can you be incentivized to play better? Now, can you be docked for if you don't play as good? We have some of those stories like the Tennessee quarterback who just transferred to UCLA. I'm not even going to butcher his name, but Nico.
Nico. Yeah.
You know, he could have found himself in a situation being, you know, under contract for $2.6 million, which he has agreed upon going into Tennessee. And, you know, if he had another game like he played at Arkansas, now maybe, you know, that weekly check may be a little shorter. You know, I don't know. You get to the end of the season, maybe you don't get that bonus. So that's what I'm more interested to see. Are we going to structure these contracts more like the NFL?
Yeah, I talked to athletic director Ross Bjork last week, and he told me, as far as it sounds like to me, guys, scholarships actually come out of that $20.5 million that actually will affect. So if they give like a baseball scholarship to someone, that money is going to come out of the 20.5. I asked him about the possibility of a general manager, like Andrew Luck is now a GM type role at Stanford. He said no plans for Ohio State to do that right now. They kind of already have one with Mark Pantoni, and Ryan Day's the CEO. But Beanie, this is a different world now that we're talking about here. And I wonder on campus, you know, we all know football's king,
Right.
and there's nothing even that's a close second. But, you know, when a baseball guy gets a little money as opposed to, you know, a women's goaltender in hockey, because that's a national championship program, this is going to get really weird. And when it comes to managing 20.5
It
million.
is. It's gonna get dicey. It's gonna get real dicey. Like, how do you, if you got an all-star baseball guy, right, that could, you know, legitimately leave high school and go and be, I don't know, what, a top 4 pick. Those are the ones that matter in baseball, right?
Yeah.
So he can leave, but Ohio State says, you know what? Come to Ohio State, we can give you $1 million. How's that gonna play out? How is that recruiting gonna work out? And how are they gonna figure out how to divvy up those bucks, like you just mentioned? A big question that I have is, you know, when it comes to NIL, I think this whole thing presents more questions now
Yeah.
that it's in play. But with NIL dollars, is it going to be an offset?
That is the thing that I think they're still trying to figure out to a certain extent. I know the Buckeyes is creating a new in-house group, just like every other university around the country, because now you can actually take this over in-house. But what are the Title IX issues that you may face, right? That $20.5 million, how much of that is going to go to the women's sports? You know, and then what is that thin line of flirting with Title IX versus doing what's right for the revenue generating sports, who pretty much spearheaded this argument, this movement, right? So still a lot of unknowns. Still, no matter what, still historical moment for college athletics because the university are now able to pay the players directly. But let's see how it turns out.
But Dave, just to answer your question, man, it's going to be really interesting and see how they divvy up these dollars amongst the sports. And I really think it's going to be a case by case basis. I think you are going to have some situations to where, you know, if you do have that premier baseball player, that you will go out and give him a little bit more than that premier hockey player, just because he may have more of an impact immediately on your program. So it's going to get real interesting. I can't wait to watch it all unfold. I'm loving the fact that, you know, right now these guys can go out and make money, and not just from an NIL perspective, but from the university. Now it goes into their budget. But when you said that the some of this scholarship money is going to come from this $20 million, that's where I kind of scratched my head, because before, wasn't scholarships coming from like the endowments and people that they send back? So what do you do with that money? Where does that go?
Right. Yeah. And it's going to be really weird, because then you can make a case, because you can still do NIL in addition to this. So then it's going to be, you know, do you pay Jeremiah Smith out of the 20.5 mil, or do you just say, look, you can make so much on your own. We got to use our budget for someone else.
But it's not, but you're not going to, if he can make so much on his own, not use his budget, you're going to use the budget for someone else. Well, it's going to be a school that's going to use the budget on him.
Right. Right. But then, then
you know,
Florida
so
gets
it's still
a hold
yeah, but it's still, so I want to see what it does to those big numbers that you hear about guys are making. Like, you know, you hear the number $4.5 million that Carson Beck got to go to Miami and things like that. Okay, so where did that money come from, right? Is it outside sources? Now, and the big hurdle is with those outside entities and those outside dollars, now they're under review for fair market value. So maybe you're not allowed to just say, hey, I want Carson Beck here no matter what, and I'm willing to pay $4 million, and maybe 2 is coming from the school and 2 is coming from the other outside entity. Well, that outside entity is now officially under fair market value, and that dollar amount, that contract has to get reviewed, and that can potentially not pass the sniff test.
Yeah.
So what does that do?
So there's one other element here I do want to touch quickly with you, Cardale. There's back pay that's going to be awarded, $2.8 billion of back pay to people who missed NIL, going back to 2016. How's that timeline work for you, Cardale?
What's my beef?
Exactly. What's my beef?
Right.
So exactly. So, and I'm going to segue that into our anonymous text because that's where it came from. Right?
Oh, okay. All right. So, let me set this up. So our weekly segment, the anonymous text, we have our guys get in the phone. They're not going to out who said it, but they're going to read something. So, all right, Cardale's got an anonymous text from someone.
So from a former player
Okay.
who made this university a lot of money. So historical day for college athletics. I'd imagine appeals are coming soon, though. And I said, why is that? This is the first time I'm going to go back and forth with this. What makes 2016 so special?
That's what I want to know.
I want to know the
For
same
that.
thing. The NCAA has been making money on the student athletes back since the beginning of time. Excited for the future, but why only go back 9 years?
Yes. I don't know. I'm sure Beanie would say, why not 2006
Right.
instead of 2016?
Yeah, I mean, exactly.
Let's
I mean,
go collect the data
Yeah,
on
seriously,
the
seriously.
individuals that were bringing in dollars, how many jersey sales. That's something that they do have.
Mhm.
Nike has that amount that whoever was selling jerseys or whoever was on these billboards or whatnot for the
Yeah,
university,
for sure.
you can go back and figure out these things and see that there were a lot of money made from advertising on a lot of guys prior to 2016.
Oh, for sure. And then I look at what, clearly my time of 2012 to 2015. Oh, I should have came back for that COVID year. But anyways, I just look at and I tell the story all the time, and I went from walking down High Street, I can walk down completely nude and no one would bat an eye or knew who I was, to literally the following day I couldn't even walk to class. And then seeing number 12 jerseys just magically appear in the Barnes & Noble, and then commercials and things like that referencing myself, and then walking around campus seeing 12 gauge, which was, the nickname shirts and all this stuff. And I got to thinking like, man, it'd be cool. Like, all these different companies that's making things based off my likeness, and I can't even get a free cheeseburger. Right. And then, so Ohio State, after we won in 2014, Ohio State had its highest number of applications apply, right, from high school kids. And then also they raised the most amount of money in school history with the athletic department, right? Why? Because people want to be associated with winning programs, right? We just won a conference we just won a national title, and now everybody want to be affiliated with it. Now everybody is more lenient to give and to support that, to get back to those glory days and feel that feeling that they felt before, right? So we played a part in all of that. Just go back a few more years.
Yeah, just for our guys on set here, just go back to 2005 and we're all good.
Yeah,
right?
we're all good. But yeah, I think that's their comment where the appeal is coming from. I think, guys want to push that back, as far as possible.
One thing, the NCAA and universities better get in front of this, because it could get real ugly if they do not get in front of it early. Because we're talking about not even the 2000s. What about the 80s? Going all the way back.
Yeah.
I mean, they better get a hold of it quick.
I think you go to a point where you start to see the major TV deals and media deals, because that's where the huge influx of money came from.
Yeah.
Right.
That's where I think the legitimate argument could go, where you talk about the brand awareness and how the brand has spread so far and so wide at an individual time frame.
Yeah, well, Cardale mentioned that 2014 season. We're going to deep dive that coming up next year on The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Welcome back to The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm Dave Holmes, joined as always by Beanie Wells and Cardale Jones. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Pods, or also follow us on Spotify and on social media at The Script OSU. All right, guys, so bad news out of Oregon this week. Their star wide receiver, Evan Stewart, torn patellar. Looks like he's out for the entire season, almost certainly. And it brought me back to 2014, where you lose that star player, and that was much closer to the season when Cardale, you guys lost Braxton Miller. So we're going to deep dive that for 5 or 6 minutes here. And Cardale, your initial reaction when you guys saw Braxton Miller go down in that practice, what do you remember of that day?
I mean, for us to be in camp and how rowdy things was, you guys know how camp is. I mean, you can hear, a pin drop, how quiet it got, because this is not a guy who goes down and act like he's hurt and then get up and want to stand in ovation like some of our professional athletes do at a high level now these days. This is a guy, if he goes down, he's down. Like this, if he goes down, go get a stretcher. It's been times where he's went down and slow to get up, but down like this and grabbing his shoulder the way it was, we knew it was serious. They know how serious it was. But for us, it just flipped the switch on our team. I know he had a slip up in week 2, but it flipped the switch on our team where he made up for so many lack of things we did well as a team with his ability to run and throw the ball, it made every one game just take it to another level.
Yeah.
Right? From the attention to detail, to the focus, to the grind, to just the physical aspect, to the mental aspect. Everyone, not just the quarterbacks, but the linemen, the running backs, everyone you just saw that switch continue to happen throughout camp, and then how much and how well we started to play as a team each and every week throughout the season. But it's hard to replace a guy like that. We did a great job of not saying like, hey, JT, you got to go in there and do exactly what Braxton did. No, Coach Herman did a great job of saying basically, I'm going to maximize JT Barrett ability in this offense and these weapons around him. And then when JT went down, same with me. We wasn't running too many zone reads and quarterback design runs or anything moving me too many ways that those two guys could do. And we just maximized the things that, everyone had to offer and to bring to the offense.
So he mentioned the slip up. That's against Virginia Tech. All right, Beanie, I'll be honest. I thought they were cooked after Vatech. I remember seeing that and I thought, you lost Braxton, you lost the season. Right. Did you think they were cooked after Vatech?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. There was a
Jesus
quote
Christ.
to where
no believers on this set.
So obviously Urban Meyer's a coach. They have all these great coaches on staff. And, VTech had run a bear defense. And I remember after that game, Urban Meyer said, we had no idea what the bear defense was because we didn't go over it in practice. And I'm thinking, what? This is Urban Meyer, one of the greatest coaches in college football history, and he's not preparing his team for every type of scenario. And I just knew out.
In his defense, preparing and going back to what they've done only 5 to 6 times the year before, a style defense versus preparing and getting a young quarterback ready for a brutal season. So it's like, where's the happy medium? I would imagine. Right. I mean, I never had that conversation with him, but I would imagine where's the happy medium. But then on the flip side too, it's like a bear defense, pretty simple. The guy in front of you blocked.
Right.
It's just we just lost a lot of our one-on-one battles. Clearly it was something that we wasn't used to, but I guarantee you that following day, that Sunday practice, we had a segment, and leading the rest of the season, we had a segment of practice to play and plays and prepare for bear defense, because clearly, as you see, the following week, I think we played Cincinnati. It came out in a bear
defense. Everybody tried to throw that out.
So everybody tried to
defense.
Exactly. So we had plans for it all, and I just fast forward the following year when we go up to Virginia Tech and play those guys. Clearly getting ready for bear defense, but we had a whole kind of game plan separately just for bear defense. I remember the first play of the game, man, I get out there in the bear, and I got to check to a quarterback run. I was like, it's about to be a long day. But we hit them for, 8, 10, 12 yards and basically saying it was like, yeah, we got a plan for that this year, but it's all about winning your one-on-one battles. Clearly that slip up, we didn't. And it was a big eye-opening moment for us. And I think the rest is history.
So I love right there how Cardale just came to Urban's defense. As I was going in. They're like, hold up. Let me tell you what really went down.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny. So then JT Barrett, they run the table the rest of the regular season. This guy's a potential Heisman Trophy candidate. And then I was there on the sideline. I was covering the game when he goes down against Michigan. And Cardale, if I tell you I thought you guys were cooked after Vatech, I thought you were dead and buried. At that point, I'm thinking, I'm checking the program. Oh, Lord, they're going to go to Cardale Jones. What now? So when you're on the sideline, and now it is your moment, and you have everything to play for. Are you freaking out? I would be freaking out, but I'm a beta male. Are you, or are you like, no, this is finally my time to show?
Well, clearly that's why I wore my gold pants today. These, I'm fortunate enough to have 40s, but these are the only ones I really cherish the most because I only played in one Michigan game, and it was that one. But at that individual time, yes, I was thinking, like what is about to happen? Because JT's another guy like that. He's not a guy that, goes, going back to Penn State earlier that year, the guy played with a torn meniscus, goes into overtime, when rushed for 2 touchdowns in overtime with a blown out knee after he made contact with 2 defenders at the 6-yard line and still find a way to get in the end zone. So these are not typical athletes that we see today versus, if you injured or you hurt.
Right.
Usually a lot of these guys, you see if they got a boo-boo, they hold on now. So these are tough guys. So I knew something was wrong. And, JT's one of my best friends and to this day. So it was a surreal moment of not really worrying about him too much versus going to finish the job. But the first thing we did after, I go in, I think my first pass went to C-Deck, just because of the nerves and things like that. So whoever got that ball, you got a souvenir. But after the game, after the hype and everything kind of settled for me personally, first thing I thought, okay, is he okay? Where my guy at? And then knowing that his leg was broke and then he wasn't. So my response, like, find out his leg was broke. I talked to Mike Sipp, was our head strength trainer at the time. I said, so he not playing next week? so he's out next week. Well, his leg is his leg is the other way, Cardale.
Yeah.
But he won't be back?
So he's listed as doubtful?
Cool.
So I want to ask you about this. So you guys weren't in the playoff at that point. Right?
No.
You have to beat Wisconsin. And did Urban tell you guys, like, look, we don't have to beat Wisconsin.
No.
We have to bloody these Badgers to get in this playoff?
No. And honestly, if we were in the playoffs or not, I think the game plan would have been the exact same. Go out there and show why you deserve to be in this position and show that you're still a top 4 team in the country at the time. Wisconsin had a lot to offer at that year. I mean, Melvin Gordon was a Heisman Trophy finalist.
Yep.
Doak Walker winner, one of the best backs in the country, outside of Ezekiel Elliott. But you know what I'm saying? But you go into these situations where you just worried about each and every play. He did a great job of keeping me in the moment as my first start. Clearly, he probably thought like the nerves was going to be up there and just being excited and probably thinking I was going to try to go out there and do too much. Him and Tom Herman did a great job of keeping me in the moment and keeping me locked into the task at hand. That was each and every play. Wisconsin was the #1 statistically defense in the country at the time as well.
Yeah.
And for what we did, and I make this argument all the time, I say, guys, listen, my job was a lot easier because of the guys I had around me. I never felt the pressure that's saying, hey, we got to go out there and score every drive because I knew that they had to block a guy named Joey Bosa on the other side.
Yeah.
And I knew sooner or later he was going to make his presence felt on that other team's offense. So I felt no pressure at all going into these situations because of how much faith I had in our defense. And clearly, it don't hurt to throw to a guy like Michael Thomas. It don't hurt to hand it off to a guy named Ezekiel Elliott and being behind the offensive line of Jacoby Bourne and Pat Elflein and Billy Price and Chase Ferris and you got Taylor Decker and all these guys. They made my job a lot easier.
So I thought you were cooked after Vatek. I thought you were dead and buried after the Barrett injury. After Wisconsin, then I jumped back on the bandwagon. Beanie, at what point did you believe that team could win a national championship?
I think it was after the Wisconsin game as well. I mean, who was it? Was it Devin Smith?
Devin Smith.
He was the
jump ball city, man.
Ultimate cheat code.
Yeah.
He was the one guy that, he would just settle, and then all of a sudden he's going over the top. And it was like Chris Carter, all he does is catch touchdown passes because all it was him catching the bomb and him taking the top off of a defense. I mean, it was after that game, I'm like, shit, this team's a little different.
Yeah.
They are different right now, and you could see the mentality shift in the team and the way that they were preparing and the way that they went out and played with physical and aggression. It was crazy. It was a crazy difference from that team and the Wisconsin game to the team in Virginia Tech.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And I think the guys around me, I think it was another surreal moment for the guys around me, was basically saying, hey, you know what, this is his first start. Very inexperienced at this point as far as playing, but clearly we got trust in this guy. We watched him practice and play with him for 3 years to this point. And these guys' games elevated around myself as well. So they made my job so much easier because they continue to do the right things. They made it as less stressful as me as possible. So I give all the credit to the other, 21 guys out of the other starters on both sides of the ball that really helped me walk into that situation and say, you know what, let me just do me.
It's funny how history looks back on these things. Like the 1980 U.S. hockey team, right? The Miracle on Ice, everyone remembers. You remember for beating Russia. That wasn't the gold medal game. That was the semifinal, but that's the one people remember. And that's almost Alabama to me, where you remember the Sugar Bowl because it was Bama. That felt like the title game. And then by the time Oregon got there, it was like, well, that was nice of the Ducks to show up to the trophy presentation.
Right.
Like for me, it was over. Like once Bama, it was over at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I think game planning, actually, I think Oregon was a little tougher because how well they were on offense and having the Heisman Trophy winner, Marcus Mariota. Another big thing that our defense don't get credit for in that 2014 run, and that's why I stand on this team. I would put this team versus any Ohio State team versus any college football team ever because 3 games back to back to back, we played against the 3 Heisman Trophy finalists and held them to their career, not season, career worst games. Amari Cooper did have 2 touchdowns on us, but one was off of busted coverage. So I really don't have that up there too high. But our defense to prepare for a top running back, then a top receiver, then a top quarterback, and to hold these guys and check the way they did, they get so much credit, and I pat these guys on the back so much more, and especially going against offense like Oregon's was so innovative right? And then having a guy like Mariota who could run into the tee, and when they were snapping the ball within 14 seconds every play.
Yeah. Well, your team ate back in 2014, but if we know one thing about Cardale Jones, he hasn't eaten a lot lately. This guy just did a 72-hour water fast. All right, so it's time for our segment here on The Script. Am I a nut? So, Cardale, am I a nut? Or is not eating for 3 straight days the worst thing you could ever sign up to do? That's terrible.
No. I think it's not the worst thing you can do. Was it mentally and physically challenging? Extremely. Extremely. And me and Beanie was talking about it before the show, is that, I didn't even look up all the health benefits for this. It was just something really I wanted to try. Beanie, you know this, man, as you continue to get further away from your athletic and playing days, it's hard to find things that's going to continue to challenge you on a physical and a mental level. And literally one night after I had dinner, I said, you know what, I'm going to try that 72-hour fast thing I saw on social media trending. And I did it.
Man, how bad was that dinner that as soon as you're done, you think, I don't need to eat for 3 days?
Well, I did cook it myself, so it wasn't the greatest. But yeah, and like I said, I tried it, man, and then I didn't look up all the health benefits to afterwards. Now, I am anxious to try again here in July, next month, where I am going to really record it. The first day I drank 172 ounces of water. 172 ounces of water total.
You can make yourself feel full a little bit.
21, that's 21 and a half cups of water.
You got to. Yeah. So, but the next one, I am gonna track accurately with the weighing in the day before and all that stuff, and try to keep more track of how things is going.
Look, Naked and Afraid is one of my favorite shows, right? I watch it all the time, and I see those people like going into like convulsions after not eating for 1 day, let alone 3 days. I mean, they can't find food. They scavenging for nuts, trying to kill birds, trying to do any and everything to find a meal after 1 day.
And I'm walking past the refrigerator every 5 minutes. I'm walking past the refrigerator, not doing anything.
You're a strong man.
It's the mental part. I was like, oh, man.
Dude, I'd have to have some black boxes over me to go on Naked and Afraid, man. I'd have to starve myself for a couple weeks before I'd get naked on TV. My goodness. Well, I'm glad you made it. So, Cardale, maybe next time on Prime Sportsbook, we can offer like a bet on what your first meal will be after that next fast.
That'd be good. I mean, well, you got to ease back into it. I think the biggest thing is the over-under, because after the 72 hours, guys, I feel like I can do more.
Ooh.
I feel like I can do more.
What's the longest you've gone, Beanie?
10 minutes. Look at me.
He's snacking in commercial
like
break.
I said, I went down that rabbit hole after the fast was over, reading like this 36-page research paper on like all the benefits and then why 72 hours. Because that was my biggest, why is it 72 hours, right? And that between 72 and 75 hours is not many benefits after if you go longer. You actually start to run into some health issues. So
he read a 36-page paper and then he ate the pages.
And then I ate it. I was so hung up, some hot sauce on it.
And well, that was a great show here on The Script, a podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Follow us at The Script OSU. Subscribe, Apple Pod and YouTube. Follow us on Spotify. We're back here next Wednesday and every Wednesday with a new episode of The Script. Now go get something to eat.